time is valuable, especially now that so many of you are just starting to open your libraries and figuring out new services for your patrons. And so we hope that this webinar will give you some good information on options to proceed with the new normal that we're all living in. A couple housekeeping tips to review first. Everybody has been muted except for my co-host and me. If you have any questions, we would love to answer those for you. So if you scroll down to the bottom of the screen, you should see a little Q&A link pop up. And if you go ahead and type in your question, I will try to get to those during the session. I'll answer those either in writing, or some of them we might turn over to Patrick to answer out loud. And if we don't get to your question, then we will try to get back to you via email. Just so you know, this session is being recorded. So after the webinar, we'll send out an email with a link to the recording so that you can review it or share it with anybody else in your library. So for introductions, my name is Shelley Emerson. I am the Library Services Consultant for Northern California, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. I'm based in the Bay Area, just about half an hour out east of San Francisco. And I joined BroadArt just a little over 4 months ago. So it's been a really interesting time to join a new company, especially a company where my job is supposed to be outside sales. And I've been grounded inside, as many of you have, for the past 4 months. So I've still been doing a lot of training with the company, a lot of Zoom meetings, both with people from BroadArt as well as with customers and prospects. So getting to be a pro on Zoom, as I'm sure many of you are. Before BroadArt, I have been in the library space for about 17 years. I worked for a company called Alibris, where I managed Alibris for libraries. And we were selling hard to find and out of print books to libraries all over the world. And I also spent a year working for Atlas Systems selling software for special collections. So I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to my co-host now, Patrick.
Hi, I introduce myself really quick. My name is Patrick Deering. I have been with BroadArt now. It's just been over a year. I personally am based outside Chicago, in the Chicago suburbs. And as Shelley shared, this is a little bit new experience. I was just trying to calculate when was the last time I was home for this extended period of time when you're used to being effectively a traveling salesman. I've been in the library world or library services for over 16 years now. And it's a little bit different to try and do these types of meetings and these types of broadcasts from basically my dining room. So welcome to my home. But this is a great opportunity to be able to share some of the information that BroadArt offers and services that we offer, and try and walk through on a wide base like this, where we can get maybe a broad audience, where several different people you're all going to have a little bit of a different background and have a little bit of different needs. We can kind of kick things off with this type of a session. And then what we hope we'll be able to do is follow up with anyone who's joined in. If you're interested in what you've seen, we can touch base and talk about what we offer individually as well. So we're going to go ahead and get things started in our session. We're starting with a little bit of a general overview on McNaughton. Because again, this is a McNaughton webinar discussing McNaughton as an approach for the new normal. And we're definitely going to be going into the details of McNaughton, but in prepping for this type of a presentation, I really kind of latched onto this idea of what is the new normal. You know, there is no playbook for this. What everyone is going through right now, first of all, is very unique and different. So some of the comments might be very general, but in some cases there are concerns and issues that are universal. And so let's kind of just talk about where we stand now and where libraries are looking at what will become the new normal. What is it? Well, you probably know far better than I do what ALA has been doing and what the types of research and studies that they've been offering, including a survey which they just published. It's only a couple of weeks old now, but it's funny in this type of an environment, data that's only a couple of weeks old can already seem ancient because things are changing every day, if not every hour. But some of the data that they had collected, which I think pretty much carried them through the end of May, beginning of June, was a snapshot at that time based on the survey that they published a couple weeks ago 38% of libraries were still open or had some sort of partially open status, whether they were offering curbside services, whatever the case may be. Now, it didn't go into detail to see how many of those might have been closed and had already reopened, because again, depending on where libraries are in the country, different states and different regions were treating this differently. But at that time, 62% of the surveys had still said they were fully closed. And of those 62%, what I found fascinating, and again, these numbers I'm sure have changed in the last couple of weeks, but at that time, which was only a few weeks ago, 37% had a plan and 47% were absolutely unsure of when their buildings were going to reopen. And that, unfortunately, is the new normal. Every library is going to answer that question differently, and how people will provide that library access will be on an individual basis. But I wanted to pull those statistics together because, if nothing else, it shows that no one is alone in this. You have plenty of company, and there's plenty of opportunities to learn from each other, and hopefully have opportunities like BroadArt to step in, because we are working on a nationwide basis. And a lot of times I have customers who just ask, hey, what's everybody else doing? You know, we're not sure what to do. People like to know what's out there. So these numbers will continue to change, but access is definitely going to define the new normal. Also attached to that is the circulation of products. If you're closed, how can you circulate a physical collection? And 64% of the people that provided answers to the survey showed some level of concern about how they were going to be providing access to physical collections going forward. And that is a situation that probably isn't going to change, even though some of those statistics, I believe the survey that was published was dated June 12th. The number of people that are going to be concerned about their physical collections, if nothing else, may even go up, because that reality is starting to shift now. Libraries are starting to reopen, but maybe they're doing it on a limited basis. In some cases, they're creating solutions that say they're going to offer curbside delivery or curbside access. Well, access to what? Your entire collection, limited collections? A lot of libraries, I will just say on a personal level, a lot of libraries I personally have spoken to, because in some cases the staff isn't being utilized the way they normally are being utilized. Some staff are actually delivering directly to patrons, something they didn't historically do, but there's suddenly a need that type of, if you're going to circulate product, there might be a need to be able to provide that in a delivery-based service, as opposed to having libraries come in or patrons come into the library as they typically would have just a few months ago. And related to that, which I'm not seeing as much of, but it actually popped up in the survey that ALA had posted, is that there is a building need of by appointment services, where the library might be open, but maybe only partial open. You've also have limitations that if your building is open, but you need to maintain 6-foot distancing. Well, I don't think I've ever been in a library whose shelves are 6 feet apart. So that is definitely a limitation, and how they can solve the ability of patrons coming into the library when the physical requirements say you can't have access to the entire building. Well, you have to limit that access or make it by appointment so you don't have people competing in those spaces. And that is obviously a huge change and a huge difference of where the new normal is going. Related to that ends up being the idea of how do then those collections need to change. So when you start looking at collection development, if you have the fundamental issue ends up being, and this is another study that, again, you probably are more familiar with than I am, but it's worth pointing out because there is data being collected and there are studies being done to try and give as much of scientific basis of decisions as possible. And so the most recent one is the Realm study. The first round of those results were actually just published, I think either maybe the beginning of this week or maybe last week. And what that Realm study did, in case you're not familiar with it, it started looking specifically at types of material, but only certain types of material. So libraries that are using the Realm study to dictate, well, how do we treat our materials as they go out to the patrons? And then also, more importantly, or just as importantly, what happens when they come back? The Realm study addressed 5 different product categories, including hardcover and paperback books. Technically 4, because including with the paperback and hardcover, they tested the inside of those books as well. So the actual paper, as opposed to just the exterior. It introduced an entirely new term that I'm still trying to adapt to my daily vocabulary. It studied biaxially oriented polyester film, which to most people would just be Mylar. But since Mylar is a brand, you really shouldn't say Mylar. So it is now biaxially oriented polyester film. So they studied that, and they studied DVD cases, but they didn't actually study DVDs or CDs, anything that goes into those cases. So depending on how a library is going to be addressing that type of study, their own personal interests, the level of concern and support their patron base may have, in some cases that collection may need to start shifting toward the physical products that there's data to support, like hardcover and paperback books. I knew before even the shutdown started occurring, libraries were pulling puzzles, they were pulling games, they were pulling all kinds of materials out of circulation, simply because particularly back then, they just didn't know how to clean it. You really can't easily disinfect a 1,000-piece puzzle. So as you start looking at the studies, start again making your own decisions, one of the biggest definitions of the new normal will end up being, well, what will those collections look like and what will actually circulate? That gets impacted also as you start changing how those collections are going to be made available. If you're doing delivery or outreach, it's possible, if not probable, that what you're delivering, the services you're delivering, are to a specific population base, possibly an at-risk or elderly patron base, that they don't feel comfortable coming into a library anymore, or they're in a situation where they are high at risk, immunocompromised, that they're more sensitive to the idea of going out into public. The libraries are doing a great yeoman's job of trying to make their collections and services available. But if that continues to increase, you might end up seeing a spike in individual types of products that are needed. And without being too general, a lot of people like large print that are not elderly, but suddenly you might see a spike in large print. Again, it's what types of collections are going to be built depending on how you're getting those collections into the hands of your patrons. One of the odd side, maybe benefits, but also drawbacks of the pandemic is the fact that virtually every library, even if they were open to some level throughout the pandemic, were pushing their patrons to use the online resources. They're pushing them into the website, pushing them into digital services. And that is fantastic for libraries, particularly maybe in wealthier communities, younger communities, more urban communities and suburban that had access to fast and high internet speeds. But you ended up creating this weird side problem where suddenly you've now trained all of your patrons to use those online services, which is exactly what you wanted to do. But oh my heavens, they are now placing holds left and right because they suddenly discovered that hold feature. So you're going to see an increased use in the internet is now going to increase your holds. And most likely where that's going to have an impact is on the bestsellers. Every library always has a struggle of how to maintain the bestseller collections, how to control their holds ratios. As digital holds increase for physical products, that's something that is going to be a new normal that librarians are just going to have to address. Related to that is so many libraries have done such great job of making online and digital services available. But in some cases, those services are still going to be dependent upon some level of physical support. And, some really good examples of that are really the book clubs or the reading programs. It's not necessarily easy depending on your population, but conceptually it's easy to do an online book club because you can all be in a Zoom, you could all be even just on a conference call if you don't want to see each other. There's all kinds of ways to do it, but how do they get the books? Not all book club members are going to have access to the digital versions of those books. And so they're suddenly going to need those physical services. And suddenly you're in a situation where, once again, you have a very specific title, and it may not be a bestseller, but a very specific title that suddenly 10, 15, 20, 30 people in a book club want access to for a couple of months. And then what do you do with it? In some cases, libraries don't have the luxury of stockpiling an individual title and to support an individual service. As great as a book club can be, there are practicalities that the new normal is going to have to address. Part of that new normal and addressing it is that infrastructure. Maybe you want to be able to offer 15 or 20 books for a book club, but how are budgets going to be impacted by the new normal? If you're a library who happens to be funded by sales tax revenue, I'm sorry, that's the simplest version of saying it. Different libraries will be affected in different ways. Some will see immediate impact. Some may see a little bit impact a little bit longer term. But the fact of the matter is almost every library is going to have some impact on their budget. And that might be because of reduced funding, or the very real possibility is that some of that budget that is, maybe it's not being reduced, but it suddenly has to be utilized for things that were never budgeted, like additional cleaning supplies or additional plexiglass materials to separate the patrons from the librarians and the services that are being offered, personal protection equipment. All of those types of items would never have been in an individual budget. And depending on the size of a library, those could become expensive. So suddenly budgets are going to have a lot of different strains placed on them. Not that they weren't already strained to begin with, but the new normal is going to have a huge impact on that. That is, again, going to have an impact with those collections. The other area that the infrastructure will be impacted is staffing. Realistically, there's going to be a lot, just like the delivery services I mentioned earlier, there's going to be staff that is going to be needed in a number of different areas, and maybe not in the traditional service area of readers advisory. If there's no reference desk, they might be someplace else. Those staff are not going to be available to do all of the things they used to be able to do, because now they have to help scrub down tables after every session, or I don't even know what people use to clean a computer keyboard, but I'm sure there have to be products out there, because that's gonna have to happen. And staffing resources are going to be strained to try and provide all the services they used to, as well as all the services that are going to be introduced specifically for reopening after the pandemic. And also realistically, you're going to lose staff. If budgets are being cut, there's only a few areas that the money can be saved. You can cut on collections. A lot of libraries don't want to do that because they don't want to see you don't want their patrons to see a direct impact on a loss of revenue, or because of loss of revenue. So they won't cut back on the number of titles they buy, maybe, but they may have to cut back the number of people who are behind those doors processing those titles, or placing those orders, or doing some of the doing some of the support material and support services that patrons may not have seen. So they won't notice it right away, but they're gonna notice it eventually. And unfortunately, I've already heard examples of simple librarians not wanting to come back to work, or not be in their original position out of fear. And there's no reason to shame them. There's no reason to have any extended conversation about it. It's just a reality of the new normal. There will be people who are in patron interfacing positions that unfortunately may not be comfortable being in those positions anymore. And so this shifting of responsibility, shifting of resources, or again, the possible loss of those individuals. So we've covered all these great individual items, and we've talked about things that, again, you are in a better position to know than I ever would be able to, because this is hitting all of your front lines. And every individual item is going to change based on your individual library. But what this webinar is trying to cover is some possible solutions to helping you address some of these individual cases. And one possible solution that we want to offer is McNaughton. Now, some people may be familiar with McNaughton. Brodart has been around for over 80 years. McNaughton has been around for a big chunk of that time. McNaughton's been with us for over 50 years, long enough that we kept it as its own name. So in some cases, it may confuse some people as Brodart offering a McNaughton service, but the McNaughton name is a very long-standing and is the oldest subscription-based program that's out there. But what is McNaughton? Well, as I mentioned, it's a subscription-based program. It's an opportunity to work with Brodart for your bestsellers, for specialty collections, for a number of different products, to get them through an annualized subscription service where the libraries choosing the titles, it's based on patron needs. This is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Everything we do will be customized with you to be able to take a individual subscription and bring in a collection and build that collection and rotate that collection as you see fit to service and to support the patron requirements that you're seeing. The McNaughton program comes with fully processed books. It comes with free shipping. It comes with a lot of services that will actually support areas of your library that you might be seeing stresses and strains on. But we try and simplify everything we can by giving you all of that, the finished product, in a very simple administration with simple reports and online access. But before I get into the details of the new normal and how McNaughton can apply that, I just wanted to see if there were any questions. I saw one had come up. I hope I answered that regarding the data of when that ALA report was issued. Shelley, did we have anything else that had popped up that I should jump into before I answer before I jump into the next?
I think we're good, Patrick.
All right. So again, thanks everyone for still being with us. If you do have questions, use that Q&A section, and this is where we're going to be getting into the meat of it. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask as we go. So all of these individual pieces are, McNaughton can address each of them individually. So if we're looking at the idea of collection development, that's really where McNaughton, if you think about pre-pandemic world, McNaughton's been around for 50 years. This is not a product that has been whipped together specifically to solve a problem that's created because of COVID-19. This is something that libraries for decades have been looking at how to work with their collection development programs to bring in a variety of products in a simple and simple process with the best use of their budget. So looking at the collection development piece of it individually, you'll see some of these topics pop up, just what I talked about in the new normal. These are all features of a McNaughton subscription that have existed for decades. One of the most popular being those bestsellers. Libraries always address collection development in individual ways. And we at no point does BroadArt or McNaughton ever try and step in to say, hey, you should change your workflow. McNaughton is structured to work within the workflow that you have created. When we look at your workflow, we can say things like with the bestsellers, what is your holds ratio? How many titles do you typically buy to support the holds you typically get? How many holds do you build up to before you buy additional copies? McNaughton allows you to go in and instead of having to purchase individual copies that become part of your permanent collection, and then you have to figure out what to do with them, in a McNaughton subscription program, you'd be able to bring in those titles, bring them in, bring in the quantity that you see fit. Again, this is something that you are customizing, you are determining how to utilize the plan. You would bring in those titles. Once they stop circulating or once the holds ratio drops below what your typical threshold is, we have a built-in program that you can return those titles back to us. Again, if you mentioned individual, as I mentioned previously, that one of the components of McNaughton is a simple administration. Part of that simple administration is free shipping to and from. So you end up having an opportunity of building up your collection, having 5 copies, 10 copies, 200 copies, whatever size collection you think you need. And instead of trying to flood your friend's sale to try and get rid of 50 copies of James Patterson after 3 months when he writes his next book, you would have an automated resource, an automated opportunity to rotate those titles out and bring in new titles again, maybe bringing in his the next James Patterson book that's become popular. You have complete control over that. Before I move on, I see one of the questions that's popped up. I'm glad there was asked for clarification. We do this for all libraries. So we have public library programs. We also have university library programs. In some cases, the needs of a university might be slightly different than a public library. So again, everything we do with McNaughton is customized. What I'm going to be talking about today is kind of the general overview. And if you are working at a specialty library or an academic library and you have specific concerns, we can touch base with you after the program and see what your exact needs are and work forward on that with you on that. Extending back to the popular collections and the bestsellers, you also have the need, whether it's for outreach services or even your regular patrons. Again, McNaughton has been around for decades. This is not a pandemic solution alone. So this is a program that maybe will help you transition through what the new normal will be. But long term, you might say, well, I have people needing large print all the time. That is a specific area that really is strong within McNaughton, because one of the things that McNaughton does when you get into the individual features of the programming, we don't allow anything to go through a McNaughton program because the titles are rotating into you and then you're sending them back to us. We want to make sure they stay in your collection as long as possible in the best condition possible. So we do not enter any paperback material into the program. Fact of the matter is some large print titles are only available in trade paper. So one of the things that we do is we convert all trade paper over to hardcover, and I'll pop over back into my video. I mean, show you, this is a trade paper. This actually happens to be a travel guide, but this is something that we would take a trade paper version of the product. We would convert it to hardcover. It still gets the dust jacket. It looks just like any hardcover that's in your collection. We've fully processed it. I mentioned we've got the Mylar jacket. Oh, shouldn't be using Mylar, but I already forgot that big long term that I was supposed to use. But you've got the cover. The jacket's already there. We customize your spine label. We can customize text that goes on the back. We can do your barcoding. We can do all these great things for McNaughton. And one of the best parts is this idea of taking all the trade paper products and converting them to hardcover. So if you want to build a large print collection, we really do provide you almost a unique opportunity to do that, because we're going to give you a product that doesn't even exist in the wild. We're going to allow you to take trade paper large print and circulate them as if they were hardcover. And what's really nice about it is, well, while we will introduce a new ISBN for that, I know that that's a topic that has come up in the past. While we will introduce a new ISBN, when we give you the cataloging record, you can use the original. And if you interlibrary loan it, you just recognize if somebody interlibrary loans what should be a paperback against that ISBN, they'll get a hardcover, but I've yet to hear anyone complain about that. The hardcovers last for a really long time. They look great on your shelves, and they're definitely going to circulate regardless of whether you're doing them through outreach or just through your standard patrons. I mentioned the book clubs earlier. That's really no different than a bestseller. And in some cases, it's giving you the best of both worlds. A lot of book clubs that I've dealt with, again, pre-pandemic, this is not a unique solution for the current time that we're in. A lot of libraries were creating rules for book clubs to say, you know what, we can't support your book club with titles that are bestsellers because we don't have enough copies to support all the holds. And so there were actually rules being put onto book clubs saying, you want to do a book club? The book has to be at least a year old, because then we can interlibrary loan copies from other libraries. There's nothing wrong with that as a solution, but it does put the onus onto the book clubs to say, well, that's not necessarily the book I wanted to read. And so if you want to support those book clubs, particularly if they're now going virtual, you still want them to get the benefits from the library, you can take any bestseller and say, okay, you've got 25 members of your book club. We can bring in 25 copies of the newest bestseller, and you will have access to that for your book club. So it's a great solution, works just like it does for the bestsellers. You can bring those book club titles in, bring them in for, whether it's something the library runs or an individual runs, you can bring them in for the time period they need. Maybe it's as little as 2 or 3 months. Once you're done with all of those extra copies, you send them back to us absolutely for free, and you then still have more titles coming in, because it's always a rotating collection, and at no point do you never have anything on your shelf. We don't care how quickly or how slowly you send those titles back. So it's not like, well, when you send a shipment back, we send you a new one. This is a collection development tool. This is an idea that you're going to have the best titles on your shelf at the time you need them, and we will make the program work as best we can to fit within whatever needs and whatever parameters you're trying to establish, whether it's for the short term of the new normal or as we get into the true new normal. If it doesn't go back to the way it was, this program hopefully will still work for you, because we want it to be a long-term solution. One of my personal favorites, I actually happened to show you the example, is there's also the need for rotating collections where you get into those annual products like the travel guides. So many libraries I've worked with say we can't afford to bring in 50, 100 different titles for individual travel guides every single year. It's just not practical because they're expensive, and they're not always the best circulating item in a collection. And we all know that. What's great about the McNaughton program is, again, whether you use this for short term or if you do it for long term, it's the opportunity of saying, you know what, they come out once a year. So use the McNaughton program to bring in an entire slew of titles for the 2020 season. And then when the new 2021 titles get released in the fall, you get the new ones in, and then you ship all the old ones back. You don't have to worry about the cost of shipping. You don't have to worry about the fact that you suddenly have outdated titles that probably wouldn't sell at a friend's sale, even if you have a big friends group, because most people don't want titles that are circulating. They're more than a couple of years old, because what good is a travel guide that talks about something or the hot restaurant from 2 years ago? So it's just this really great tool that as you're looking at collection development, whether the current new normal or the long term, those rotating collections are really a fun way of utilizing. And again, McNaughton programs are customized to whatever the library needs. So if you've got individual requirements, we can try and work the program, and there's not a one size fits all. So you can do a blend of the book club titles, large print titles, travel guides, as well as the bestsellers. And the best part of the program, and once again, this has always been in existence prior to the pandemic, we have a built-in loss protection and retention program. So we talk about collection development, which to a lot of people in a subscription-based service like this would say, well, I'm not really developing my collection because it's really rotating out. The fact of the matter is we actually build into the service a loss retention program so that if you actually just have a situation, you know that a title's been lost or stolen, or it's damaged beyond possible recognition to ever be able to return to us, you are protected by that. So you're not losing anything in your collection. And more importantly, we build in the idea we want you to keep some of these titles. We want those titles to be valuable to you. So we will always build in some level of a retention program so that when you get those titles, you choose which titles come back to us and you choose when. And if you choose that, you know what, those large print titles that were converted to hardcover, those are amazing. I don't want to give those back. That's fine. That's exactly how the program is structured. And you can give everything else back, even titles you've received more recently, and you can keep the types of titles that you want. So if you want to keep one title in a series because you just want to make sure you have a copy of every title within a series, get them in the bulk buy, the bulk acquisition for the bestsellers, but then just say, you know what, we're going to hold on to one or two of these, or we're going to put one in each of our branches, whatever the case may be, because we want to make sure we can support the needs of our patrons that are going to want the older titles as well. So there's a great opportunity to utilize the McNaughton program to service your collection needs right now and to also develop that collection going over time. And one of the other areas we had talked about with McNaughton was the issue of potential staffing in the new normal. One of the kind of the backdoor areas of McNaughton that has, again, always been attractive is the idea that it is a really simple program to administer, and it takes a lot of the responsibility away from staff within the library so that their time is freed up to do something else. Right off the bat, it's simple administration. We're going to give you monthly reports, so you will always have everything at your fingertips to know exactly what we show you have, what you have on order, what you've returned. All the data will be available to you, both in a actual physical report that we will do a snapshot once a month, as well as giving you instant online access. So there's going to be a very simple way to be able to see exactly how this program is being utilized. In the initial stages, we will be working with you repeatedly for the first couple of months just to make sure, is this working the way you wanted it to be? Again, this is not a short-term solution. This is not a solution for the new normal of the next 2 months. This is something that can help you bridge this gap, get you into what the permanent solution for your library will be, and McNaughton can be and should be one of those permanent solutions. We don't want you to be in a service for only a couple of months and then turn it off. We want to make sure it's working for you, and we will hold your hand to make sure that everything is answering your questions, everything is working the way you expected it to, and we will do everything we can to meet those needs. Part of the administration to make it as simple as possible to utilize, so not only will you get the reports and the instant access, we are going to try and help you utilize the collection development tools that we have available through our team of librarians who are in our collection development staff, that they will provide you the recommended title lists that are available through the McNaughton program. So you'll be able to take a sneak peek or take a peek at the titles that are coming up over the next couple of months. You'll, as you normally would do, you would be ordering everything months in advance. You can use some of the free services that we offer as part of this program to say, how do we want to build this collection so that your time is not wasted administering the program and bringing those titles in. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest perks of the program is the fact that these titles are coming in shelf ready. As I showed you with the sample, we've got the quote unquote Mylar jacket. We've got the spine labels. We've got barcodes. We've got some of the products, the standard features that most libraries would need for their collection. We do that for you before it comes in. We will work with you so that when you receive those books, you just open up the box and put them right on the shelf. If you, as jumping ahead a little bit, we have something called the Lucky Day collection. Different libraries have different terms. But if you're not cataloging a service, we can work with you on that as well. We can do, special custom labels. We can do a lot of different information. We can work into the way your program is structured, that we can support the idea of whether you're putting these into the system to put holds on, or if you're putting them into a special area of the library that just is a browsing collection, and it's literally the lucky day. Hey, you happen to be here and you want to look at these titles. Hey, look, here's the newest James Patterson. You were number 572 on the hold list, but here's one right here, and you can check it out right now. That is an area that's also become somewhat unique to the new normal, is while the Lucky Day collection has existed, the way it's being utilized right now, it's been so much fun talking to some of my libraries, because I have several libraries with this service, that they've basically taken what the program used to be and they're turning it into a Lucky Day collection, because the fact of the matter is their patrons, in some cases, their patrons can't go beyond the lobby, or their patrons can't go into they can't get past the computers, or they can't go through the stacks, whatever the case may be. They're bringing those titles into that area right near the checkout counter, and suddenly circs are just going through the roof because those titles are like right there. It's like putting bubble gum in the checkout lane at the supermarket. Oh, hey, it's right there, I'm going to grab it. So there's ways to utilize this that we can help set them up in advance, so that when you get those products, they're ready to go. Whatever shelf you want to put them on, those titles are available for your patrons. And when we have the patron support, one of the best features of McNaughton, and how a lot of libraries will actually use it, it's encouraged that you would just say, I know I'm going to need 100 copies, or I know I'm going to need 50 copies, whatever. But math changes. And in particularly something like James Patterson, this series might need 200 copies, and this series needs 3. So every title can be different, and you can change that as you go. What some people will do is they'll use it to specifically address the holds ratio, and say, oh, we didn't plan as well as we thought we did, and suddenly our holds ratio has gone up. We need to get a couple extra copies to support holds. Again, the program is extremely flexible. It's very customizable. You can do things in advance. You can do things in the fly, and you can even do things in the past. If we've had the titles have been available through the McNaughton program historically, they will still be available for you to pick up, even if it's something like, say, a book club wants a title that was released 6 months earlier. They're still available for you to go back and find those titles through the McNaughton program and still bring them in. So again, we're giving you the best flexibility we can, so that your staff time is best utilized to support the program, and more importantly, they have the time to go off and do something else. One of those other areas is specifically talking about budgeting. Now, this is one of the areas that, again, most of the features of McNaughton program have all been in place for a long time, but this new normal is starting to shift a couple of them into a stronger spotlight, and it's definitely worth pointing out. First and foremost, as I've mentioned multiple times, all of these are flexible and customized plans. At no point do we just, give you a form saying, check this box and this is what you get. Every program we have is customized to the individual needs of our libraries. So first and foremost, we can work with the budgets that you are presenting to us, and we can make sure that the program will work in the best way possible. But one of the areas that's simply a feature of the program has suddenly gotten a much stronger spotlight is the annual billing. So the way the McNaughton program works is, again, we will customize that plan to your needs, and we will then bill you in that plan in an annual invoice. The benefit to doing that, which is suddenly becoming more apparent, is it actually encumbers those funds for an entire year. So as we talked about budgeting restrictions and budgeting concerns going forward, there are libraries that by sheer happenstance, in one case, actually started the McNaughton lease in March, because they've been playing, they worked on it in January and February, they started it to work in March, they just set it up and just gotten their first shipment, and then all of a sudden they shut down. The benefit is they are now facing budgetary crunches, and that program was already paid for. So at no point do we want to say you're trying to play the system, but the reason that structure was originally put into place was primarily for the military and government accounts. They have the same problem, and they have it every year. It has nothing to do with the pandemic. They definitely are in a situation that in some cases, Air Force-based libraries, Army-based libraries, partway through the year, somebody could sweep through and say, you know what, we need money for something else and we're going to take it. And if you haven't encumbered it, it's suddenly up for grabs. Well, it ends up being a weird little perk of McNaughton that you can then enter into these types of programs, know exactly how much it's going to cost. There are no surprises. Again, there's no shipping costs in addition. All of the processing and everything is built in right at the beginning. So you know exactly what you're going to pay. The money is all encumbered. You get no surprises. And then you're just ready to go until the next year. So it's definitely an area that the new normal of budgeting is definitely something that McNaughton has suddenly becomes a very attractive solution. And I have a feeling, just like the military discovered, it's a long-term solution because it's something that you never know when budgets could be reviewed. Part of it, the budgeting, what also helps is because, again, all of those things are built in up front. The processing and the cataloging, it's all incorporated into the price as well as the shipping. So all of the budgets definitely can work with the customization requirements of the library and it being attractive with the billing program as well. So I'm going to jump over into actually what the program looks like. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I didn't miss any questions that were coming through. Did you address everything, Shelley? Anything I need to
We are all set. Yep.
All right. Fantastic. Then I'm going to jump over into our actual, what the program would look like if you were to sign on. Now, if you're already a customer of BroadArt, this is not going to be new to you. This is BIBS, B-I-B-Z. It is our ordering interface. And whether you're a McNaughton customer, a purchasing customer, or both, and that's also worthwhile mentioning, this is not an either or program. In some cases, in most cases, but in most cases, we have libraries that will be doing a portion of their budgeting and a portion of their collection development through the McNaughton leasing program and the McNaughton subscription, while another part of their services are being supported as a traditional purchase to build traditional collection development. So if you know BIBS, this is really going to be no different, but I will highlight the one area that does end up changing is this little section right here underneath the blue navigation bar. You'll see this little section called product. If you're only a purchasing customer right now, what would show in this would be books and AV, because that's what you have access to. And you would not see a drop down arrow because you only have the one account. If you end up adding a McNaughton program, you would get the drop down arrow and you'd be able to switch between the two. But the way they work is identical. So if you're familiar with BIBS, you're going to be familiar with how it will work with McNaughton. And in the interest of time, I am not going to be doing a full BIBS demo. We do have some recorded versions of BIBS training that can be made available. If you have a BIBS account, you have free access to that right on the homepage. They're right down here in the corner. A couple of them actually were provided by me. So, and if you don't have access to BIBS, well, we can sign you up. You can get access to it, or more likely, one of your library services consultant can work with you and at least showcase this on a one-on-one basis if you want to go in a little bit more detail. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to cover a couple highlights because this is really where the meat of the program comes in and where all of those individual pieces of the puzzle come into play to give you the finished picture of how to address your library's needs during this new normal. So right off the bat, you're going to start, anytime you log in, you're going to start on the home page, and you will see at the top section, this little area called Special Lists. Special Lists, if you are in the McNaughton section of the program, are all of the titles that are available through the McNaughton program. You will see they get posted here based on the date they were last modified. Unfortunately, because of what's been happening with publishing world during this pandemic, titles seem to be changing in some cases both directions. Some titles are being pushed back further and other titles are being pulled earlier. It's a little like the Wild West, but in general, we're going to try and keep as much information as we can as up to date as possible in our BIBS service and making them available to you using these individual lists. One of the things that you'll see here is because the June list was must have been modified with change, it's showing as a more recent version than September. But we're going to go to the September list because in general, just like you'd be doing with your traditional collection development, you're going to be looking a couple of months out. We will provide you these lists 3 months in advance so that when it gets posted, you will be able to see what is coming out in September. And when you click on it, again, if you're familiar with BroadArt and you're familiar with BIBS, this view looks no different than what you would have seen if you had picked on another list through the purchasing program. But what you'll see in here is, if you're not familiar with BIBS, you will see a breakdown of as much data we can possibly give you at a glance so you can make a determination of how to utilize McNaughton for your collection development needs. Right out of the gate, you're going to see that this list of September releases includes 152 titles. So one of the things that we are doing is we are taking our team of librarians and our collection development department, and they are specifically going through and finding the individual titles that they feel are going to be best utilized in a McNaughton program. So as you start looking at the individual titles, you will end up seeing individual authors. You're going to see topics. You're going to see the titles that you are going to be familiar with that are coming out in September. There should be no surprises. The bulk of the way the McNaughton program is always used is to support bestsellers. So as a result, all of the bestsellers will end up in these lists. Now, one of the nice things about it is we end up having a lot of the specialty areas. So right off the bat, you can see in this list of 152 titles, 32 of them are large type. So if you end up saying, well, you know what, I'm going to start a McNaughton program, but I really want to focus it on the large type. No worries. You can come in, you'll get the same list everyone else does, 152 titles. You can then, with one click, you can restrict this list down to the 32 titles that are available specifically for large type. And again, because every title in here has been converted to hardcover, you don't have to worry about whether it's hardcover, it's always going to be converted to hardcover. So you can actually see, it's kind of worth noting, particularly if anybody's a current customer, this is something a lot of people weren't aware of. If you ever see the term McN bound, the copy of the travel guide that I just showed you, that is a McN bound book. So it is to have a trade paper book converted to hardcover with a traditional dust jacket. So you can restrict to just large type. So you actually, let's see, do the math here. McNaughton bound, there are 27 of them. Large type, there's 32, so that's interesting. So 5 titles came out in hardcover, and those are included in the list. But then there was an additional 27 titles that only came out in trade paper. And that's just something we've been seeing even before the pandemic, is there's some really good titles that are coming out only in trade paper. So you get nice little hardcover in utilizing it. So there's all different ways you can use these filters. Again, if you're familiar with bibs, the filters do not change. So if you're using this for the first time and you say, you know what, I'm really only going to bring in 10, 20 titles a month, you can say, well, let's restrict this down to the starred reviews. And we're going to end up having 15 titles that are available from this list alone that just have starred reviews. And you can build your collection that way. Kirkus reviews, book list, there's again, all these different filters that are super powerful that even if you end up not using McNaughton, be aware that these tools have all been created at the behest of librarians. We built this service, we built Bibs specifically with the interaction and feedback of librarians to say, how do you do your workflow and how can we best support it? And you can see there's a lot. All of these filters you break down. And in some cases, they're general filters you would see in other search engines, but there's things like demand, which is unique to BroadArt. Because one of the important things to remember about BroadArt is we do not have a retail arm. We do not sell on the internet. We don't sell to the public. We don't sell to bookstores. We don't sell to Amazon. We sell only to libraries. So when we start collecting data to say something is a popular title, or we say with our algorithm, we create a quote unquote hot demand, it is hot because libraries are looking for it. Yes, there's going to be some overlap between a traditional bestseller and a librarian's desire for those books. Clearly, you're going to end up having titles populate both places, both a hot demand as well as the next one down is print run. You can also limit by that. Yes, there's a correlation. But what's nice is when you get into some of the specialty titles, like when the Crawdads Sing was a good example from last year, that title hit our radar as a hot demand title long before Reese Witherspoon put it on her book club, long before it's hit anybody's New York Times bestseller list or anybody else's list. We had recognized it early, and it becomes this tool that if we recognize a title's value, and particularly if we put it in something like a McNaughton list, if a librarian doesn't know, anyone who's worked with us, like I said, McNaughton's been around for 50 years, BroadArt for 80 years. For the libraries that have worked with us long term, they know if we're saying a title's popular, we don't take that term loosely. There's a reason it's in there. Now, the reason might be it just won a state award in Texas, and now every library in Texas is buying it, and suddenly it spikes into a hot demand, and you're in Maine, you may not care about what's going on in Texas, but it's still going to be a really good title and you might still want to consider it. So there's just fun ways to simply reduce this list into a very easy to manipulate in an easy to manipulate way, so that, again, going back into what the new normal is, your staff does not have a lot of time to administer this program. So with a few clicks, you can create an entire order, get that order processed, ready to ship. Everything comes to you free of charge, and you're ready to go as quickly as you can click in the buttons. Going back into the home screen, just because I want to make sure for those who might not be familiar with bibs, just the general overview. And I remember I missed this when I jumped into the September list. If you're doing large print, we even have a highlighted list of titles that are large print. So there's going to be a lot of different ways these lists are being built. And one other one that's worth noting is if we have a young adult plan. But the way the plans work, if you're in an adult plan, you can actually pick up young adult titles if you wish. So we're trying to, again, make these titles and make the programs as flexible as we can so that they meet whatever requirements you are putting forth. You can see right on the top, the information, there's the travel guides right there. We are very excited and we are very proud of the program we've created with our travel guides. And McNaughton is by far the highest use of those travel guides into our systems, because it's just a great way to get new ones on your shelves on an annual basis. And those are starting to come out because we're at the September list now. They start releasing in September, October for a 2021 year. So you're going to start seeing those lists on a more regular basis. There are all these hyperlinks going into additional webinars that we offer. We have some suggested titles that fall up in these little carousels. We've got all the help screens. There's all kinds of data and information that's always going to be available to you, whether you're a purchase or a McNaughton customer. It's all very much at your fingertips, and it's easy to manipulate. The one other area I will highlight is if you are a McNaughton customer, you will end up having not only this little product bar, but you'll have this little credit card looking thing that's off here to the side. When you click on that, I mentioned that you have access to online record keeping. This will show you at a glance at any point what is available for you to be able to purchase or acquire additional titles. So all of that is available at a glance here. And then we also have all of that data available through order history. I mentioned earlier, you can go into and find other titles. You can just click for a title and look for it, but you can go back and look at some of these other specialty lists. Like we might have some genre lists or other large print highlight lists that we created. You can go back and look at other lists. And if you see them on a list, you'll be able to bring them into your system. And of course, we have one of the most sophisticated search systems available with all kinds of database resources, awards, product best-selling lists from other countries, restricting based on age if we're doing with children's. There's all kinds of information and material that's available for you within bibs that can be used whether you're purchasing or if you're in a McNaughton program. And that is pretty much as far as I wanted to take us, because anything else that we go further is going to be more of a customization and would start addressing what an individual library might need. So I will, before I go any further, I'll bounce it back to Shelley and make sure there was nothing I needed to circle back on.
Yeah, so I think we're good on all the questions. I'm going to go ahead and show everybody just how you could go ahead and get a hold of your library services consultant if you wanted more information on McNaughton or had questions that we didn't cover today. You would just go ahead and come to brodart.com, and this is our homepage, and you see that there's 3 different divisions of the company. So you'll be checking here the Books and Library Services division. But I just quickly wanted to point out our other 2 divisions. We have a furniture division selling furniture for libraries. And especially important for these times, we have our supplies division, which has some great supplies for dealing with the pandemic right now. You can get face shields and plastic, or the plexiglass separators and thermometers. So all kinds of great supplies if you're looking for things to help you open up your library. So we'll click on over here to Books and Library Services. And just quickly, this is the homepage for the books section. And under the Library Services, this is where you'll see a list of all the other things we offer besides McNaughton. But I just wanted to go ahead and take us over here to Find a Rep. So this is what you would click in order to find out who to contact. And you would just click on your state and see who your rep is. So Courtney handles Ohio, and you've got her email and her phone number. So if you have any other questions about McNaughton, feel free to reach out to Courtney. As we mentioned earlier, we will go ahead and send out a link to this recording. And so please do feel free to share that with anybody else. And as Patrick mentioned, we've been doing a number of other webinars. So you saw that they were listed on the BIBS homepage. If you don't have a current BIBS account, feel free to reach out to your library services rep and they'll be happy to send you recordings for one of these other webinars. So that's all we have today. We thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to, we'll stay on the line for a couple more minutes if you have any other questions that we didn't answer. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time. And we hope to hear from you again.
Thanks, everybody.